Hello and welcome to Late to the Party Movie Reviews. We review movies that are a minimum of 10 years old and see how they hold up today. Today we are reviewing one of the last great films from the 90s, The Matrix. It was directed by the Wachowskis, formerly the Wachowski brothers, produced by Joel Silver, starring Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, Hugo Weaving, and Joe Pantoliano. Music by Don Davis, edited by Zach Steinberg. Okay, this is almost an instant classic, and it was you could see that when this movie came out, it influenced the entire pop genre. There was references of it throughout cartoons, other movies. When Keanu dodges the bullets going backwards, when Trinity jumps in the air and does the almost Karate Kid kick, that was used in all of the spoof movies and shows, and you saw it across cartoons. Super iconic movie. It spawned a franchise and a trilogy of the Matrix movies, and I believe that right now they are shooting part 4, and will eventually, during today's show, get to discuss our excitement or potential lack thereof of the 4th Matrix movie. So, brief summary. It is about, well, anybody got a brief summary on this one?
A dude pops a pill and a bunch of stuff happens.
So, it's about an acid trip. I liked
It's about you going on a good acid trip and telling everybody else about it.
One way to look at it.
I think it's about waking up, freeing your mind to how things are versus how you thought they were. You know, even the analogy of taking the blue pill and the red pill, it's still all over the place in pop culture today. And I'm sure Jose, never having seen this, will have probably had a whole bunch of ding dong. Oh my God. Wait, what? That was the Matrix? He's probably going to have a whole bunch of oh shit moments.
Hey, there it is.
He's going to have he'll have his oh shit moments.
No recycling.
So let's start. We'll go backwards this time. We'll start with Jose, and then we'll move back over to Josh. Why do you think this movie was popular at the time, Jose?
Whoa. All right. Starting off why I thought it was popular at the time. Was it popular at the time when it came out? 99?
Oh, it was super blockbuster.
Super popular.
Okay. I can see why. I mean, action-packed, entertaining story, the idea of waking up. I mean, what year was it? 99, I believe?
99.
So we're like right at the edge of the new millennium stuff going on. So I can see why a lot of people, felt woke going to go see that movie. Definitely tell why it's a go-to for a lot of people when it comes to like, film theories and all kinds of stuff. I mean, you could definitely tell its impact that it had on film as far as and pop culture. It was fun. It was entertaining. But yeah, I could see why it was a huge blockbuster. I mean, dang, dude, it was an action movie, and it was an action movie that made you think. And I think a lot of people at the, I don't know, I guess you want to say dawn of the new era really and enjoyed that. And I feel like it kind of changed the way that we saw films. At least that's from my perspective. It's really early on. It's one of those that, not only entertains you, but kind of gives you the idea of what, I can see it was a lot of action. It was a lot of fun.
Isaac?
It was very fun. It was action packed. Story was good. You were hoping that he was the one. You were hoping that this underdog that I'm pretty sure a lot of people identified with him because he had like a shitty job. He didn't like his job. And then he like went through that. They were all chasing him down. He's like, why am I being chased? And then he takes the pill and he realizes what's going on. And then at the end of the movie, we find out like, holy crap, he's like everything's opened up and he can do it all and see it all. And the fight scenes were awesome. The agent, Mr. A, the agents were all just awesome. How each person just became the agent and how they just kept going in, and they were perfect villains. But yeah, it was a good movie.
Lego.
Kind of like bouncing off what these guys said. It was action packed. It had a little something for everyone, and it's got those just so many symbols throughout the whole movie. So much symbolism to like religion, philosophy, all this stuff, and you really see that classic hero's journey where he progresses through. And I mean, it's tried and true, and you're always going to have a hit when you follow that method. So I think with the revolutionary action bundled up, it was perfect.
Mr. Scott.
Yeah,
beam me up.
You know, it's hard to build off of what these guys said. I definitely agree with Lego's assessment about it being the classic hero's journey. The whole concept to kill the dragon, save the girl is definitely present in the film, which is why it makes it so attractive to everyone. It's the natural impulse of all of us to look to a story like that with wonder and the desire to be a part of it. But having watched it with Liz yesterday, it provoked a lot of conversations, and I really think that The Matrix was the start of our modern era of epic film making, especially epic films that are in a sequence or with sequels. We really hadn't seen anything like that since the original Star Wars movies, and this was the same year that Phantom Menace came out. So there's this new race to develop films that are going to be like epic in scope, and this movie is certainly, I really think it's the start of this era.
I think one of the most important parts about it, from my take, was that it really was one of the first movies to seamlessly put in the CGI with the natural effects and have it. You can't really tell before you see like the Lawnmower Man or other movies where they would try to stick CGI into the movies and it would be very choppy and you could see when it was happening. And this was just very seamless. When Neo was turning into like that liquid metal, they pulled that off in Terminator 2, but it still was, you could tell it was rough. So this is the beginning of those effects being very refined. I thought that there was really something to the significance of the color of the pills, with the red pill being reality and the blue pill being delusion, and those two are still carried today in politics as well. So it was groundbreaking, definitely groundbreaking, and it was a great movie. I had a good time watching it. I always have. I've seen it many times. Does the movie still hold up, or is it hopelessly dated?
Oh, it definitely lives up. Still holds up. I believe it perfected the green screen for sure. Like how you were saying about how it looked all choppy back in before this. And I think they got the technology just at the right time where they were able to perfect all those scenes. And I remember when I was looking at a lot of the behind the scenes footage and stuff, you saw like a majority of green screen, and like that wasn't really used a lot in film history until this movie. And I think Phantom Menace did start using that too when they made it. But for sure it holds up.
I think they used blue screen before green screen, is what they were using before that.
Yeah, guys, I think it definitely holds up. Everything looks really, really good. I mean, even the scenes that are like very obviously green screen, you can tell the background is green screen. I don't feel like it takes away from anything really in the movie. It feels almost like when you're watching a cartoon or something, like especially like with those Sentinel robots come in and they're like getting the Nebuchadnezzar and all that. Like that's very clearly CGI, but it looks good enough, and like there's enough emotion in the way they move and the way they're captured where it seems real enough to pass. And I just think like that's the mark of something good. Like it holds up.
but also we're in an era now where people are very quick to call out stuff when it's like, oh, dude, they're ripping off this, they're ripping off that. And as great as The Matrix is, I can't help but point out that it did take a lot of stuff. You know, it did rip off a lot of things. And being in the era and you know, today and what we're in, you know, people love to call a lot of that out.
What do you have for
I feel like,
specifics on the ripoffs?
Yeah.
Immediately was Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell was one of the, I was like, yo, like, this is like an American Ghost in the Shell. Little bits of Akira. One of the things, because my dad saw me watching, and he was like, he walked in on the, he was telling me about the karate in it. He called it karate, but you know, like, he said like, oh, that's really cool. What movie's that? And I told him, oh, it's The Matrix. And he was just like, oh. And it was like, okay. And my dad's actually a pretty big, like, he loves like Jet Li, Bruce Lee films. He loves Jackie Chan, like a lot of those old school ones. So him pointing that out also made me think like, oh yeah, they're also doing a lot of kung fu film in there. The other
would you
thing
think
too
influence
was,
is ripping something off though? I mean, there's lots of influences on things. I didn't.
It just
I would look for
depends.
more of a direct correlation before I'd say it was a ripoff.
But I feel like if there's that, and then I kind of got scared because I didn't want to Google anything else until after
No,
we
it's
were
good, man. That's part of the deal.
But,
I mean, we've
like,
been rolling with giving every movie 10s for a long time. It's good that you're digging into this. I'm excited about it.
But that's what I'm saying. Like it just with those things alone. Like I was like, should I Google it? And I decided to hold off, just because I'm like, I feel like just the Ghost in the Shell alone, like the whole thing with the head waking up in the pods, having to kill, like it's pretty clear that it's. I don't know if it's an homage to it, but you know, it's you got it walks a very fine line.
I've heard there's a novelization, not of The Matrix, but that I can't remember what it's called. Some woman apparently has a science fiction book that's very similar, especially with the humans being batteries and all of that.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So it does walk the line between you know, inspiration and directly copying, you know, certain things. I think there was enough different things to where it still came up to something different. And you have to acknowledge too that with how many movies there are today, how many books have been written and stories have been told, how hard is it to come up with something 100% devoid of any type of influence from anything that you know that you've done? If you just made an outer space movie, you couldn't help but have somebody say you were copying Star Trek, Star Wars, Lost in Space, or any of those other older things. Okay, so let's see. Let's talk about the bucket system, and then we're gonna go down the rabbit hole. On the bucket system, I think this movie holds up really well. I want to give it an 8 out of 10 myself because it was entertaining. It was solid. The special effects were groundbreaking, and the movie still has pop culture references that are valid, you know, even 21 years later as it stands. What do you think, Jose?
No, I'm still gonna give it a solid 9.
Isaac, I'll edit that.
I'll give it 8 buckets. It was
8
good.
buckets.
I saw it in theaters when I was younger in '99. I loved the soundtrack. I owned the soundtrack on CD when it came out. I loved all the new metal that came out with it, the Rage Against the Machine and the Marilyn Manson and all that new metal.
Rob Zombie.
So yeah, I love the soundtrack. I wish I would have been into the attire too, but around that time Columbine happened, and that was a big no at school to wear any of that craziness. But yeah, dude, I give it a solid 8 because it was a fun movie. I loved it. I loved the sequels. I didn't really like the last one though. And then
I'm with you on that.
The spin-off of the Animatrix, that was cool. Animatrix was that anthology of all those animes, little shorts. So that was cool. It's a good movie. Very good. pretty good.
All right, Mr. Scott.
I was gonna say I want to hear from Mr. Scott.
Yeah, it's so this movie is one of those movies where it's definitely minimally a 9, but I'm kind of hedging toward 10 buckets just because of the influence that it's had, and like I said, because I think it's the start of our modern era of like these epic, multi-film franchise flicks. There is a scene in the movie at the end when Agent Smith and Neo are battling before Neo gets shot to death, where Agent Smith kind of pins Neo down on the train tracks, and you can hear the subway coming, and he tells Neo, he whispers in his ear, "Can you hear that, Mr. Anderson? That's the sound of inevitability." And at that moment, it struck me that the end of this modern era, at least for me, seems to be Avengers Endgame and Thanos' line that he is inevitable. It seemed like, I don't know, maybe it sounds a little woo-woo, but it seemed like there was like kind of a connectivity, like the beginning and the end of an era of epic filmmaking that we've been watching, where all of the films that are in this era kind of fit into that category of being like influential and paying homage to all kinds of things that have come before, but are unique in their own right, having their own like genres that they fit into. So it kind of felt like it was the beginning of everything that's kind of established our modern era. So I'm really tempted to give it a full 10.
Oh, nice.
I love that. That's a really good explanation.
It really is, especially the what you were saying about the ending of Endgame, and I think we talked about this before, where you don't have the benefit of hindsight as you're going through stuff. But I mean, we just went through pretty much the end of The Walking Dead, the end of the first phase of Marvel movies.
First 10 years.
We went through. What's that?
It was the first 10 years of Marvel, wasn't it?
Yeah, we went through that. We went through the end of the Game of Thrones. Like, there was a whole bunch of just things tying up from an era, and I think Josh is right. That might be the beginning. You can't tell where it begins and ends until you have the benefit of hindsight to look back on it. But I think that's a good precursor. It's a good start to give this whole era a starting point. So hopefully the next era is pretty awesome and it's not lame, because I've had a pretty good 21 years of movie watching, to be honest.
Right.
Okay.
Lego, what's up?
Do we lose Lego?
10.
No.
10, 100% 10, man. This movie is so good. Oh, man. It's good for lots of reasons, but I mean, like, I love, like, what Jose was saying. Like, he sees a Western, he sees Kung Fu, he sees, like, all these sci-fi, all these different, like, genres are all, like, melded into this cool, like, amalgamation of, like, cinema. And it is, like, it is a tribute to everything that's come before, but it's its own thing. It's self-actualized as a film, and that's the protagonist all the way through. It's all about that realization of the self and becoming the true version of you, and then coming back and saying, I'm going to show the world what that looks like, and then they give the world their movie. It's perfect. It's so beautiful. It's so it's clean. And my God, Josh, you had me floored when you were making the connection with Endgame and the inevitability of the train. Like, and dude, that connection is so good, and we are so, like, in that. Like, this felt like a big epic era, and this whole year has been so insane. There's so much happening, and it's gonna get shook up. Like, things are about to change in a really dramatic way, and I'm excited to see what that means for filmmaking, culture, comics, all that. So 10 out of 10, man. This was the start of some very cool movies, and we'll see what happens after.
Josh, a couple days ago, in a text thread, had mentioned something about the Wachowski brothers and why they changed their names to the Wachowskis. And just led me down this. Well, he didn't lead me down this. He just got me thinking, and I went down the Google rabbit hole of what the Matrix 4 is supposed to be about, and so why are they not? Did they divorce each other as brothers or whatever? And it turns out that the Wachowskis ended up changing their names from Andrew Paul Wachowski to Lily Wachowski, and Lawrence Wachowski changed his name to Lana. So they both became transgendered, and they've kind of, in my opinion, retconned the meaning of the Matrix from what Scott was saying, as far as it being the classic hero's tale, save the princess, beat the dragon, to this veiled metaphor for transgenderism. So I know Jose went down the rabbit hole as well, so I'm not sure what everybody else thinks. So let's start with Isaac. We'll do Isaac, Lego, Jose, and then we will caboose it with Mr. Scott. And I guess I'll start it off. I don't know. I didn't read too far into it, but it seemed to me that it seems like it's more of a classic retcon. They made some changes in their lives, or they became who they are, or depending on what your thoughts are on transgenderism and how that all goes. They reveal to us who their true selves are, or they succumbed to their disease, if you go down another path. And I think that as opposed to using what's left of their soapbox to try to come up with something different, they kind of, because they haven't been relevant for a while, they kind of tried to retcon what they are known for and change the meaning of that to what they are looking to do now. So that's my thing on it. They want to use the Matrix as their soapbox for their coming out party. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you said it perfect. They retcon the Matrix, and I can't wait to see what they do with 4 and how they're going to make that like identified to their journeys, their hero journey into womanhood. To each his own. It doesn't take the Matrix away from what I remember it as, and I don't see it that way. But again, I'm not the one who created it. Maybe they were fighting some demons when they were making it. Maybe they were. Who knows what was going on in their heads when they're making it? I think they were just making a cool action movie, and now that, like you said, they're using their soapbox to fit the narrative of their lives, so be it. That's just all I'll say about that.
All right, Forrest. Lego?
Yeah, man. I'm not really sure there's a delicate way to start this, but I think each person kind of like, I mean, that's what a good hero is, right? It's someone that lots of people can put themselves into. I mean, you even see it with the choice of how much dialogue Neo has. It's very little. It's very much like you see his reactions and you see his actions. There's not a whole lot of talking. And I could absolutely see how someone who's going through a transition process or not feeling accepted in their society, whether it's their political beliefs, their gender issues, whatever issues you have with your society, that transition of becoming yourself, becoming self-actualized, and like becoming a part. I think that really is what the story's about. So it could be a trans story, but it could also be a Buddhist story, a prophet story, a hero story. I don't think it necessarily has to be trans, and I didn't get any trans vibes when I watched it, back in the day. So perhaps, but
Maybe in Reloaded, the two twins.
I mean, yeah, like there's the twins, and a lot of people have very androgynous looks, and like they see the world in binary, and like I don't know, there are things, but it's like, but you could say it's a Christian story. You could make the case that he's Jesus, So it's like, hey, fuck it, man. Oop. That's just another layer. That's another symbol to pick up on and say, well, how does that make me think? Maybe that's a connection with the Hebrew God, being, creating Adam and Eve and being, this hermaphrodite, and then, the joining of the two sexes is godly. Maybe we want to take it there. I don't know. I don't know what the Wachowskis are thinking, but that could be.
Jose.
Well, I didn't necessarily Google it. It was something that came up. My phone heard that we were talking about the Matrix, and it threw that video out there for me. Just weird.
That's creepy.
That it knew. So, and I remember I did watch the video. I wanted to see what the argument was before seeing the movie. And I remember when I brought it up to the guys and told them the points that, the Wachowskis were saying, oh, this is to do with transgender. This is because of this transgender. This. They told me, just be careful, because I didn't see that. Don't try to go in with an open mind. Don't try to go in. But I couldn't help it, because once you learn something or once you see something, it's really freaking difficult to not see it. But even with that, I guess, knowledge or that acknowledgement or that argument for the allegory between transgenderism, personally, I didn't see it. It was almost like it's kind of like what Lego's saying. Yeah, it's a hero. It's almost like a lot of people can fall into it, But it's also, I mean, dude, they make a lot of references to the Bible too, and it's like Lego was saying, it could be a biblical story, and I just feel like this. I mean, personally, I know that they've also directed. They directed the adaptation of Speed Racer. I believe so, right? They did Speed Racer?
Probably.
Yeah, and but I can't think of any other movies, but if somebody's really making an allegory, it's not that difficult to pick it out. For example, like in the Chronicles of Narnia, we know Aslan is Jesus. It's pretty freaking plain. Like, you don't need to know any backstory to pick up that the lion's supposed to be Jesus. There's a bunch of different movies where it's like that. You know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't need to be explained. And I almost felt like watching the movie, even with that prior knowledge of what the current, where they're at now in their lives, I still didn't see it. I still saw it as kind of like the way you guys see it, as a hero's journey and all that stuff. And then at the end, it's kind of like what Lego was explaining. You could make the argument for it, but it's not easy to pick up. I feel like if that was really their intent, if that was really what they were trying to do, it would have been a lot more obvious. And even going further, they recently interviewed, or they told Keanu Reeves, like, yo, did you know that the Wachowskis have said that this movie is a trend? And his only response was, cool. I mean,
you can't say anything but that without getting canceled in today's culture. So,
but I feel like but here's the thing though. Him saying cool was almost like he was being caught off guard. He was like, really? Because I feel like if he would, I mean, Keanu's a really stand-up guy, and he supports, everything and everyone. If he would have believed that, that was the original intent of that movie, I'm sure he would have said, like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, it took a long time for everybody to catch on to it. I think he would have, continued going. Because the guy's not going to get canceled. He's such a good stand-up guy. He would have probably known, like, if he knew that was the point, he would have supported him. Be like, yeah, it took you guys this long to figure it out. But the only response was cool. So it's almost like he didn't see it either. Or maybe he did, and he's just not letting off that much. Who knows? Again, we don't know what goes on in their heads, but I feel like even just watching something like Speed Racer, I feel like if that is the creator's intent, is to try and push a certain kind of view that they have, I feel like it would show up more often. And in this case, because The Matrix is probably their most best, well-known, more accepted work, they're going to try and, you know, show that as being, you know,
use
like,
that
yeah,
as their soapbox.
yeah. And so I don't know, like, not ragging on them, man. Like, you know, it's like Isaac said, man, to each their own, man, nothing but love. But it's just, I just feel like I didn't see it personally, even with the prior knowledge of, you know, them trying to make the argument that it was a metaphor, allegory, whatever, for transgenderism. I just didn't see it. Personally, I didn't see it.
All right, and now we have the final take from Mr. Scott.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, not to drop too many bombs. But my first thought in answering this is that line from The Matrix, from Cypher, the guy who betrays the entire crew when he's making his deal with Agent Smith, applies that ignorance is bliss. Sometimes when you deal with, especially in our modern age where everybody has to know like every little intimate thought and detail behind everything and all the nuance, and there's a sense in which that's good, but sometimes not knowing makes it better. You know, you can enjoy it because you have understood that movie or that work of art from your own perspective with your own biases in place, and you can get a certain thing out of it. And to have somebody redefine it at some later point in time really does upend your sense of reality and make you look at things in a different way, and not always in a better way. So I have a lot of thoughts on the subject, but the video, I don't remember who put it up. I thought it was you, Nate, today in our discussion before we did this review, where it was a brief interview with like Lana or Andy or whatever his name is, about the movie having like transgender meanings behind it. I got a couple of things out of that video, and I don't know if anybody else picked up on it. But the first thing is I know that there's been a lot of hoopla about it. You know, the media is making a big deal out of it. But he or she or whatever, I'm going to go with he because I'm pretty sure that's what his chromosomes are. He didn't really seem to be pushing it all that hard, but really was just kind of saying that I'm glad that this community of people, this transgender group, is seeing themselves in the movie. And while I might not personally agree with that, I think in terms of them seeing themselves in the movie, this goes into the idea of Neo being kind of the archetypal everyman that transitions into the hero, kind of like Luke Skywalker did, you know, where he starts off as a farm boy and ends up as a Jedi. You know, here Neo starts off as, you know, some poor schlub in a corporation that is having a miserable time at life and aspires to something greater and ends up becoming this messianic type figure for the people in the real world. So in a sense, that concept of the everyman can even be perceived by people in categories that a lot of us might find very alien to think about. But there's another thing in it that that requires some deeper thought, and it might not be for this particular video, but that's the idea of authorial intent. You know, creator intent in making a work. Being a pretty serious Christian, I take authorial intent very seriously, because when you look at something like a sacred religious text, you always want to be mindful of the context in which it's written and the intent of the author and what they're communicating, so that you're not interpreting things with your modern mindset into what was going on back then. And so with something like The Matrix, when you talk about like it's now supposed to be this transgender movie, you're talking about a retcon of the meaning behind the material. But the problem in this case, and it's a similar problem with things like Star Wars, is that you have the author of the original material coming back and telling you that there's a new meaning that you didn't see 20 years ago. And it makes you question, at least from the human angle of things, the whole concept of authorial intent, when the author can change his intent in putting a piece of art together, a piece of content together. So how seriously can we take it, you know, when George Lucas tells us that it was always in his intent to tell the narrative that's in the prequels, as messy as it is? Or how seriously can we take it when the Wachowskis decide that they're no longer men, and then they say, well, you know, that was foreshadowed in The Matrix. You know, we were already thinking along those lines on some capacity, subconsciously or what have you. You know, I don't know how to wrap my mind around that, and to think through that concept of an author writing something and then decades later changing or you know, retconning the conception of the movie that you, or the piece of art that you had from the beginning. And then one last real quick piece. It's a real small piece. I noted in there that he said that he was somebody who played Dungeons and Dragons and, you know, fantasy games, and I'm an avid D&D player myself. And he's kind of in my age category. I think I saw online that they're 55 now. And I have to say that back in the day, playing things like D&D wasn't popular. You were the odd kid out. You know, you get trash canned at school, or you'd have to run home while being chased by the cool kids because you played D&D and threw around these funny dice. And I think that there was a certain kind of social ostracization that took place for people that were into fantasy role-playing games or comic books, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, when this stuff, you know, the big satanic scare and all that kind of stuff. And I can't help but get the feeling that there's a certain sense in which the whole transitioning process for them feels like them playing a D&D character. Like they're trying to realize some sort of heroic archetype in their own lives that they would have preferred to their mundane, boring, nerdy past. You know, a sort of self-loathing that has caused this particular transition to take place. And I know that you know, opens up a whole can of worms as to, you know, the morality of making such decisions. But anyway, the comment about playing D&D reminded me of how it was in the old days to play role-playing games, and how much of that that social awkwardness might have played into the whole thing that we've seen take place with them in the intervening years.
But it's a valid question though. It's definitely, especially in this case with the subject. So that's so, you know, it's very touchy like this.
Yeah.
All right, that was like an after dark, right? It was good to go a little deeper on that. We have coming up, this is going to drop on Friday. For those of you watching it now, it is Friday. But for the next episode, I think we're getting towards the end of summer and fall's coming. So I want to embrace the fall season coming to us. And I did some research, and we've got 3 movies to choose from for our next episode. These are horror classics, and they're a little bit on the scary tip. So I'm putting out for you guys to choose either Poltergeist, the original, Hellraiser, the original, and Phantasm, the original. All super classic horror movies. I was really looking to try to launch it with Friday the 13th, Halloween, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, but they're not streaming anywhere.
Hellraiser. Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
Lego?
I love Hellraiser. I've never seen Phantasm.
Oh, man.
So that might be really cool to see a new one, but I would definitely be down to talk about any of these movies. Votes for Hellraiser, I guess.
Mr. Scott?
Well, I can tell you that Liz would probably choose Hellraiser because she knows Clive Barker personally.
Oh, nice.
She used to work in the publishing business, and she's actually published at least 1 or 2 of his books. So I think she would go for that. I personally have never seen Phantasm, so I'd be interested in that. And also, I went to school with Heather O'Rourke, who's the star of Poltergeist.
Rest in peace.
So I wouldn't mind seeing that movie again. But I think probably, you know, being the good husband, I'll probably hedge for Hellraiser also.
Okay, looks like looks like unanimous Hellraiser. I'm fine with any of these. You know, I'm the one that chose for us to pick them. So Hellraiser it is. So we're going to be signing off for Late to the Party Reviews. I'm Nate the Great.
I'm Isaac.
I'm Jason.
I'm Jose, and please let me know where I can get those red pills.
I'm Josh.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week with Hellraiser.